Hi, I'm Robert.
And I'm Evelyn.
And you're listening to Token About It.
And Happy New Year!
Yeah, Happy New Year.
It's 2023.
Ooh.
Which means it's almost our third anniversary.
Is 23 a prime number?
I think it is.
That's not good.
Oh. Well, I think it's called the Glowenbogen in Sweden. The big giant straw goat that they have is, it gets set fire to almost every year, but it did not get set fire to this year. It survived from like November to the new year. And so everyone's like, maybe this year will be good because it didn't set fire. So maybe. All right. But yeah, we wanted to say thank you guys as well for last year when things got a little chaotic, especially with our schedule change, because as the editor of the podcast and me going back to college and taking classes again, it's been a little harder to keep on top of things for every other week. So that's why we're going to once a month, just temporarily while I'm finishing up my classes. That way, you know, I can pass, but also still do this podcast, which we love doing. You guys have been absolutely amazing with understanding, so we really, really appreciate it. And our New Year's resolution for this podcast, I know I feel like I say it every time, but we're honestly gonna try to be better with social media.
Yes, that sounds good.
Yeah. So as you guys may know, whenever we publish our podcast, we do Tolkien Tuesday as one of our hashtags. So we're going to be trying to do Tuesday stuff right now with the hashtag Tolkien Tuesday. Just to do just some fun things with that. So Dad's in charge of Facebook, but I'm in charge of the Twitter and Instagram. And we tried TikTok, but I'm not even on TikTok anymore myself. So we're just not doing TikTok. It's too hard. So with that, I think we're ready to get into the chapter. And guess what?
What?
I actually not only wrote down my predictions, but I have them right in front of me right away to go straight into it.
Cool.
It only took me almost 3 years. We're figuring out how to do this.
Not
podcast
we.
thing. Me.
Not we.
Me.
Yeah.
I'm learning how to do this whole podcast. It's a hobby. It's a fun hobby that we like to share with you guys. So.
So I love how this.
But we got to actually do predictions. You started going into the chapter.
That's because we've done the predictions twice already.
We had to re-record because we got silly and confused with each other. That's just a little behind the scenes thing for you guys. Anyway, so my predictions. My first one was they would publicly declare Gandalf as in charge, and they would tell the elves, and the elves would agree. My second was they would decide whether or not they would march into Mordor, and my prediction is that they would. And then my third prediction is Merry and Pippin, like always, would be told to just stay behind and stay out of danger, and this time they would listen.
So number one.
So for one of these, we're gonna get into it, but for one of these, I'm gonna argue for a half. So I'm gonna argue for a half point for one of these because I think I can get away with a half point for one of my double ones.
Nope.
We'll argue for it when we get there. But I definitely got one of them right. But the other one I'm going to argue for a half point. But we'll see which one it is momentarily.
And I am going to say that one of yours is wrong, even though you're thinking it's right.
Interesting. We'll see when we get there. All right. Because this chapter is... so this is chapter 9 of book 5, and it is the last debate. And you have a ton more notes than I do. Did you want to start out? Because it looks like you have something like right away.
Well, yes. So I think it's really interesting that, almost right from the start, Gimli and Legolas are coming into the city to try to find Merry and Pippin.
Oh, yes, yeah. It starts right with Gimli and Legolas. They're literally they're running into people and we don't care. We're just trying to see our friends.
Right.
They even run into a lord and Legolas bows to him and everything. And they're like, no offense, but we don't care about you. We're just trying to find our friends.
So Gimli states that he's glad they're alive because they were such of a pain in the ass when they were with him.
Yes. Yeah, he's very glad they're alive because they're like, ooh.
But
it's fair. That's fair.
Well, and it's also, as they're walking in, of course, we get a very dwarf and a very elvish reaction to the city.
Yes.
Gimli is like, there's some really good stonework here. And Legolas says they need more gardens.
Well, even Gimli's like, there's really good stonework, but there's some places that can be improved. Once Aragorn's king, I'm gonna do him a favor. And Legolas is like, yeah, and he has more gardens and stuff. I'm gonna do him a favor too and make some more greenery. And they're so wholesome.
Well,
because everyone's watching them. They mention that everyone's watching them. They're like, a dwarf and a elf getting along? What's going on here? Well, and they're just totally oblivious. They're just going about just like, okay.
Yeah, and Legolas says, well, after Aragorn comes into his own, we'll make sure he gets some songbirds and some trees that don't die.
Yes, yeah.
Which is like, I mean, but he says it in such passing.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, tomorrow is Evelyn's birthday. I guess I'll get her a book.
Yeah. Ugh, how would I ever think about that book for me? Wow, what a unique thing.
Okay, but as Evelyn said, they ran into somebody noble. And who they ran into was the prince.
The Swan Prince, right?
It
was Eleanor?
No, it's a different person.
Oh, was it a different person? Emerhall. Oh, Prince Emerhall. Right, okay.
Hill.
Emerhill. Oh. Dyslexic. Emerhill, who has elf blood, and Legolas can sense it, and so he bows to him.
Okay, so this is from a letter that Tolkien wrote in December of 1972.
Okay.
Talking about the elvish strain in men as being observable in the beardlessness of a character in the book, of a man character in the book, shows that they have elf blood.
Does Aragorn have a beard?
Well, that's funny, because in the movie, they show him unshaven all the time.
Okay.
But according to this, he's not supposed to.
Okay.
And I can't recall if anywhere it described him as having a beard.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of a research to do.
Yeah, that's something to look into. So guys, tweet at us if you find something where he is described with having a beard. I'm gonna look back and look at that. That's something that I'm gonna look into.
Right, and then the note from Christopher also goes on, talks about, it's a different note from Christopher. Talks about how Galador was the first lord of Dal Amon and was son of a Nimodorian who dwelled in Bafasa, and the elf lady, one of the companions of Nimrod, had lost on the journey to the haven. But when she had borne him a son and a daughter, she slipped away by night, and he saw her no more. And this is kind of going back to some of the English and Irish lessons about how elves are Seiki, how you say it, about people that are half seal.
Seelies. Seelies, yeah.
Seelies. About once they had their child, they go away. I mean, that's kind of...
a lot of Irish myths have like these women who are either part seals or like part just water beings, where sometimes the men have to trick them into like being their wives, but afterwards they're like they'll but sometimes it's like they willingly go and do that. So, yeah, there's a lot of different myths where that happens.
And it's... You going back? Yeah, and also what's interesting about that, too, it's kind of the story of Aquaman as well.
Oh, it is. It really... That is exactly what... yeah.
Yeah, because that's, because it was his mother who was from Atlantis.
Atlantis, was a princess from Atlantis, falls in love with a human, has a kid, and then she's like, I gotta get back to Atlantis.
I gotta get back where I'm from.
Yeah, and she doesn't take him with him for various reasons in the comic books, but mostly just to protect him.
Right. And also, once Aragorn hears that the elf... So the notes talk about how you could tell, as I was saying earlier,
right,
how you could tell someone with elven blood in them, because they don't have hair on their face; they're beardless.
Right.
And also that goes back to the D&D.
Oh yeah, and D&D.
Elves too.
Yeah, elves and half elves can't grow beards.
No, half elves can because the whole Dragonlance series, there's a half elf that shows back up in town when they all promise to meet again with a beard.
Interesting. Okay, I was thinking half elves kind of.
Well, and the book really doesn't talk much about why he grew a beard, but I think he grew a beard and grew his hair out so people wouldn't know he was a half elf.
Oh, okay.
Because that was a very half breed.
Gotcha.
So for the world of the Dragonlance world.
Gotcha.
But so, and they also mention the Fellowship of the Nine.
Yeah.
When somebody asks them where they're from and who they are.
Yeah, and they say that like in passing as well. Like it's not a big deal. Like it's like, we're part of the Nine that left.
Right.
Whatever.
and they go to the House of Healing. Mm-hmm. So here, Tolkien keeps what he writes about the meeting of the hobbits and Merry and Pippin and Legolas and Gimli. But according to Christopher's notes, what we get in this chapter about all of that is really smushed into one paragraph.
Oh, okay.
Tolkien wrote so much more that did not get included into the story. And I was trying to figure out if it made its way into Lost Tales, but I couldn't figure it out with just a little bit of research.
Yeah, because Merry and Pippin kind of share their story, and they ask Gimli and Legolas about theirs, and they mention there's like, the Paths of the Dead, but Gimli's like, I don't want to talk about it. And it's like, wow.
Yeah.
And Legolas finally, after a long pause, starts to talk about it, but they're both like, it was really crazy, and it really messed with us.
Well, and also what messed with Legolas, he hears the seagulls.
Yes.
The seagulls, which, for the fair folk,
it triggered like being at the ocean and leaving for the Grey Havens. Yeah, right. And Merry is immediately like, no, stop that train of thought right now.
Right, yeah.
Gimli alone would miss you too much. And
but I mean, it just pulled at his heartstrings kind of.
Yeah.
Because that's something that the elves are taught is kind of a reward for a good life.
Right.
So. Yeah.
And
so Merry even tells Legolas, don't even think about going to the Havens. There's still
too much to do. There's so much to see in Middle Earth.
Right, and the world would be less without Legolas there.
Yeah, it's a really sweet moment. But finally, they kind of like you said, they squish it really quickly into what happened. But they fill them in on the trip, and they talk about like how they go to the Paths of the Dead, and then there is, I'm just condensing this even further. There's a sea battle, and the dead help them where they literally.
I'm going to expand this.
You're going to expand. Okay,
not that much more, but a little bit more.
Go ahead and expand then, because I have a thought for afterwards.
Yeah. So, for example, Legolas sings softly about the green fields that are in song. Not necessarily that he saw them as they were in their heyday, but they still pass through them. Legolas and Gimli, like I said, they start to tell about Aragorn calling to the Shadow Host.
Yes.
If you've ever watched the third movie, they do a really good job at the visuals of that.
Okay, because I was talking with someone a couple days ago, actually. I honestly don't think I've ever seen the third one.
Probably not.
I think I saw the first one and enjoyed it. Then the second one, the second one freaked me out so much with like all the Gollum stuff that I don't think you and Mom even like wanted me to watch the third one. Because you thought I would just be annoying watching it, probably.
Like you are with most things. When we're watching them together.
I just didn't want to. But yeah, I'm not surprised I didn't see it because I have zero memory.
Yep. And like I said, I'm not going to go, as Evelyn said too, not going to get too deep in what has been written here. But I just want to say that, Gimli and Legolas speak of these dead coming to life to fight.
Yeah.
And Legolas talks about how fearful it would have been if Aragorn had possessed the ring.
Yes.
Because he sees how much power Aragorn has over these dead.
Yeah.
Couldn't you imagine if he had the ring?
Right.
And maybe that authority would have turned the other way.
Yeah. Yeah, he would have been definitely a formidable enemy. And that's something that they talk about a little bit later. Not jumping ahead on purpose, but it's something that Gandalf mentions later in this chapter where he's like, Sauron isn't sure if we have the ring or not. And there's quite a few people here that if they possessed it, could take him down in a second.
Yeah. But and Aragorn has such a noble heart that it's greater than what Mordor understands.
Yes.
And at the end of when the dead men fight with Aragorn, he releases him that says, "Hear now the words of the heir of Isildur. Your oath is fulfilled. Go back and trouble not the valley again."
Yes.
And then the king of the dead actually bows to him. And then the dead turn and disappear.
Yeah.
So there's not a whole lot in this chapter about the battle itself.
Yeah, what I was going to mention is one thing that they do point out is that the fear, like the dead didn't even need their weapons because the fear of the ghost caused people to jump overboard and flee and all of that stuff. And they ended up not only winning the sea battle, but they freed a lot of slaves, and a lot of those slaves were already good people that were like taken in raids, and they decided to join the cause.
They stayed, and Aragorn was happy for this because they had 42 leagues to go quickly.
Yeah.
He says, we need to be there by tomorrow.
Yeah. And the slaves are like stretching out going, all right, let's go.
And just in case you don't remember, so 42 leagues is 126 miles.
Jeez.
All right. Now, a league is also the distance one can see from where they're standing to the horizon if it's all flat land, if it's all leveled.
Okay.
So like if you're standing on a beach looking over the ocean, the
Okay.
furthest you can see water is actually just a little over 3 miles away, which would be a league.
Okay. But something that Legolas kind of says at the end here really struck me. He says that it's interesting that the enemy itself was defeated by darkness and fear. And that I don't know why that struck me, but it really did. It was really interesting.
And
they got a taste of their own medicine.
But he also says something, oft hope is born where all is forlorn. And so he's talking about even in these obviously dark days coming, we can still see hope.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And that's such an elvish thing.
Yeah.
Apparently. Except for a couple of people who have already started taking off for the Grey Havens.
Yeah, apparently. But then it flashes to the actual council meeting itself.
Right. And it describes Aragorn's and Gandalf's faces as being grave.
Yes.
So they're very serious. Mm-hmm. They may even think that the others aren't going to agree to the plan.
Right. Just kind of mentioning what happens before is Aragorn really doesn't want to enter Gondor again until everything is done. So they have the other captains come to the fields outside where tents have been set up.
Right. And Gandalf is saying, "Hey, yeah, we're in the middle. Yeah, we're in the middle of a rock and a hard place."
Yeah. They're trying to decide not just what to do about Sauron, but what to do about the people they're trying to protect.
Right. And also, Gandalf says, victory will not come about due to weapons. So he's kind of hinting at Frodo's and Sam's mission.
Yeah, and they kind of talk around it, but they're assuming that they're in the borders of Mordor at this time.
Right.
They're assuming that's like we would have known if he had it by now, kind of thing.
Right, and Gandalf also says that Sauron does not seem to yet be convinced he will win.
Right. And that's something else, is that they all agree that Sauron is definitely biding his time because he didn't send his full force at Gondor, and that it looks like he's kind of waiting to secure allies a little bit, just like they're doing as well.
Right. And Gandalf goes on and says, we must continue what Aragorn has started. We must spring the trap that's been laid for us.
That's exactly what I said. It's like they know it's a trap.
Yeah, to keep Sauron's eye on them instead of looking around to see who has the ring.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, but I just find it unusual that Tolkien just says, I mean, he doesn't go in his 2-paragraph explanation or everything. He just says, and the debate ends.
Right. Yeah. And this is where I'm going to argue for my half point, because some of the captains are 2 of Elrond's sons. And they come in and they're like, and because during the plan, Aragorn's like not sure if people are going to do it, but they're like, no, we're absolutely 100% going to follow you. And that the Elrond sons say, it's like, we're gonna follow you, and Aragorn's like, I'm listening to Gandalf, and they're like, cool. That's where I wanted to argue with the half a point, because while everyone's following Aragorn's following Gandalf's advice, so I think I should get that half point that the elves kind of agree with Gandalf.
See, I don't think Aragorn is following Gandalf's advice. I think Gandalf's advice is to everybody but Aragorn.
See, I think he already talked to Gandalf about what, like, he and Gandalf were already like, this is our only option.
Right, but
and he agrees with Gandalf.
But I don't see Gandalf being in charge. Aragorn has to be in charge.
Right, he is in charge, but following the advice of Gandalf, following the wisdom of Gandalf. Because Gandalf even says a couple times, he kind of reminds Aragorn, he's like, we also don't want to leave Gondor undefended, and we really don't want men that are unwilling. Because that's another big part, is they say, it's like, we only want men who are willing to go knowing the peril they're in.
Right. And Gandalf says that, they've been able to collect 7,000.
A little more than 7,000.
Yeah.
But they're only going to take 7,000.
Because
they don't want to leave Gondor undefended.
And he also says, but for Sauron, it's not just 7,000 men, because we have names among us that are worth more than 1,000 mail-clad knights apiece.
Yes, and that's what I was talking about earlier, where Gandalf also kind of hints, it's like, if one of y'all had he's not sure if one of y'all have the ring, but if any of y'all had the ring, things would be really, really bad. And they talk about, like, the different people as well, where they talk about the Rohirrim that were unhorsed. They're like, there's still great warriors that we can include,
right,
kind of thing. And the Rohirrim on horses, ooh, they're like elite. And they have a lot of elite forces within that 7,000. Like, the 7,000 they have is basically mostly elite fighters that would equal much more.
And basically, these are who have survived earlier battles.
Right.
So they're battle hardened,
and they know what's coming.
Yeah. But I still love the idea that there are people among us who have such a reputation that in Sauron's mind he would think of them being much more than they are, even without the ring.
True.
And then we quickly come to the end of the chapter,
when they decide that the 7,000 troops that they have decided on will march on the Black Gate.
Right, but I also like the fact that Aragorn draws his sword and swears that it will not be sheathed until the last battle has been fought.
Yes, I saw that, and I feel like that's impractical, though. My first thought was that's impractical.
Metaphorically.
I know it's a metaphor. I know it's a metaphor. I'm sorry, that was loud. But I know it's a metaphor, but my first thought was that's impractical. Because I feel like he would literally do it as well as part of the symbolism. And it's like, it's going to get dirty and banged up, baby. Like, no, keep that in the sheath until it's ready to
But, but he could technically just put it in his belt without putting it in its proper sheath.
Okay, and it's going to knock down stuff, and it's going to cut someone, and it's going to get infected, and they're going to get sepsis and die. That's where my mind goes. My mother's a nurse, people. These are the things she gets me to think about.
So anyway, what's your predictions for the next chapter?
I don't know. What's the next chapter called?
I don't know.
So we looked it up in that little pause because we both thought it was each other's job to look it up, because sometimes I do it, sometimes he does it. Most of the time we both have it, but
yeah, so it's the Black Gate.
No, the Black Gate opens.
The Black Gate opens.
Yes, the Black Gate opens. So this has me very torn because I logically, I know it's not going to be a Frodo and Sam chapter, but it feels like it could be, but I don't think it is. You know, he's just staring at me like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's just giving me a blank poker face. All right.
That's because her face and her neck is very animated while she's saying it. She looks like a goose trying to kiss another goose.
Anyway, okay. So I'm going to assume the title is a direct reference to I think it's just going to start right with them marching. So so that's going to be my first prediction. The chapter's going to start off with them marching up.
Okay.
And then
that's a pretty give me, but go ahead.
I need the points. And then my second prediction is that the Black Gates open refers to the Black Gates literally opening for like the Horde of Mordor to like come out to meet them. Is kind of what I'm guessing.
Okay.
That's what I think that's going to refer to. And then I need a third prediction. Can I make my Pippin and Merry prediction a long-term prediction? Can I make that a separate long-term prediction?
What do you mean?
That they're going to be told to stay put and they will stay put. Can I turn that into a long-term prediction? That's separate from my 3 predictions.
Okay. So you still need a third prediction.
Right, I still need a third prediction, but I think I want to make my Merry and Pippin one a long-term one. So I still need a third one. Okay, tell me if I can get away with this.
No.
I think that the Eye of Sauron is going to be mentioned very heavily in this chapter. And by heavily, I mean at least more than once.
Okay.
It'll be mentioned more than once.
That's an acceptable
prediction.
Okay.
All right. I think that's it. I don't think we had anything else at the end of the episode.
I mean, this is only a 5-page chapter.
It was a short chapter. This is kind of a shorter episode because it was a really short, straightforward chapter. But again, I really enjoyed it.
And we also didn't want to talk about a few small things because they could be spoilers.
Oh, that wasn't me at all. That's more you.
There could be spoilers.
Okay.
Even though I don't think we're really worried about spoilers, but for this instance, I was.
Yeah, I mean, I
know
the good guys win. I know that Frodo gets corrupted at the last second because it's just too much, and so Gollum has to bite his finger off, and he falls.
Whoa! Spoilers.
Oh, shoot. Actually, okay, clap. Yeah, so I think that's all we had for this episode. It was a really short chapter. It was only about 5 pages long.
Right.
We just had to cut our Dad's over here laughing. He can't really participate right now because I accidentally did major spoilers about random stuff that I knew, and we're like, oh wait, we can't do that because of the way we do this podcast. So we just had to start our ending over. So that's fun, guys. You good?
I'm good. So I don't think we have anything else to go.
Yeah, we just want to say thanks, you guys, for listening as always. And we still have a couple bonus episodes that we promised you. And I am for sure going to look up the Aragorn beard thing. I wrote that down for me to remember to look up.
Okay.
All right. I think that's it.
Well, I'm Robert.
And I'm Evelyn.
And you've been listening to Token About It.